"Ma'am, I need you to step away from the aircraft door." The voice cut through the tarmac noise, polite but edged with the kind of certainty that comes from a uniform and a clipboard. The woman standing at the jet stairs didn't flinch. She was dressed in a charcoal blazer, minimal jewelry, sensible heels. Her hand rested on the rail. "This is a private charter," the flight attendant continued, her smile tightening. "Unless you're listed crew or an authorized passenger, I can't allow you to board." Around them, the private aviation terminal hummed with quiet wealth. Idling engines, the smell of jet fuel and leather interiors, rolling luggage with designer tags. A few passengers nearby slowed their pace. Phones came out. Screens glowed. The woman at the stairs looked at the attendant. Her expression was unreadable. She said nothing. She simply waited. Engage E1. Before we continue, let me know on the comments where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Gulfstream G650 sat gleaming on the apron, its engines already cycling through pre-flight diagnostics. Departure was scheduled for 11:47 a.m. It was now 11:37. 10 minutes. The flight attendant, name tag reading Vanessa, stood at the base of the air stairs, one hand on her hip, the other holding a passenger manifest printed on cream-colored cardstock. Her uniform was crisp, navy with gold piping. She'd worked private charters for 6 years. She knew the drill. She knew the type. And she knew when someone didn't belong. "I understand you may have been given incorrect information," Vanessa said, her tone practiced, apologetic but firm. "But this aircraft is under a corporate lease. The passenger list is finalized. If you're looking for a commercial gate, the main terminal is back through." "I'm not looking for a commercial gate." The woman's voice was quiet, low. It didn't rise to meet the accusation. Vanessa blinked. "Then I'm going to need to see your boarding credentials, company ID, charter confirmation, something that places you on this flight." The woman reached into her bag, a leather tote, understated, expensive in the way that whispers rather than shouts. She pulled out her phone. "I have it here." "Physical ID, please." Vanessa's smile didn't move. "Company policy. We can't board passengers on digital verification alone." A man in a slim-cut suit nearby slowed his approach to the adjacent jet. He glanced over. Another passenger, a woman in oversized sunglasses, paused mid-step, her phone already angled toward the scene. The tarmac had become a stage. "I'd be happy to show you my identification," the woman said, "but I'd also like to understand why you stopped me before asking anyone else." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I stop everyone who doesn't present credentials up front. That's protocol." "You didn't stop the 3 passengers who boarded 2 minutes ago." Silence. The wind tugged at the flags on the terminal roof. Somewhere a hydraulic lift hissed. Vanessa glanced toward the jet's door, where a male co-pilot stood in the frame, watching. "Those passengers were pre-authorized," Vanessa said, her voice cooling by a degree. "I have a duty to verify every person who boards this aircraft. Now, if you can't produce valid documentation in the next," she checked her watch, a deliberate, theatrical gesture, "8 minutes, I'll need to call ground security." The woman didn't move. She looked at Vanessa, then at the co-pilot, then at the phone still recording from 20 feet away. Her expression remained calm, but her eyes held something else. Recognition. Not surprise. Recognition. As if she'd been here before. As if she'd known the moment she stepped onto the tarmac that this was coming. She glanced at the cockpit clock, visible through the windshield. 11:39. 8 minutes. She smiled. Just barely. The first video went live at 11:40 a.m. 32 seconds. Shaky vertical frame. The caption, "Private Jet Drama. Woman Denied Boarding at Executive Terminal. Who is she?" Within 90 minutes, it had 400 views. By 11:42, it had been shared to 3 aviation forums, 2 Twitter threads, and a Reddit page dedicated to corporate travel stories. A second angle appeared, this one from closer, shot through the window of the FBO lounge. Better resolution. You could see faces now. The attendant's hand gestures, the woman's stillness. Someone in the comments wrote, "That's not how you treat people. I don't care what the policy is." Someone else, "She's way too calm. She knows something." The woman with the sunglasses, now standing near the terminal's glass wall, zoomed in with her phone, her thumb hovering over the share button. She didn't know the woman being confronted, didn't know Vanessa, didn't know the stakes. But she knew content. She posted it. A third video joined the thread, this one from inside the terminal. Someone had been walking toward the exit, coffee in hand, and saw the entire scene playing out on the tarmac through floor-to-ceiling windows. They filmed. The algorithmic gods took notice. On a screen inside the FBO lounge, a flight information display flickered. Departures, arrivals, gate changes. At the bottom, in small print, a passenger services reminder scrolled past. All travelers deserve dignity and respect. The irony wasn't lost. The man in the slim suit pulled out his phone, hesitated, then pocketed it. He walked toward his jet, but kept glancing back. Vanessa felt it before she saw it. The shift in attention. The way the air around a conflict changes when it stops being private. She glanced toward the lounge windows. Phones. Everywhere. She straightened her spine. "Ma'am, for the last time, I'm not going anywhere." The woman's voice cut clean and low. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The co-pilot leaned out from the jet door. "Vanessa, we need to close the door in 6 minutes." She didn't turn around. She reached for the radio clipped to her belt. The operations manager arrived at 11:43. His name was Derek, mid-40s, graying at the temples, the kind of middle management face that had learned to smooth over problems with procedure and paperwork. He wore a polo shirt with the FBO logo and carried a tablet under one arm. "What's the situation?" he asked Vanessa, his voice low but audible. "Unverified passenger attempting to board without proper credentials," Vanessa said, her posture relaxing slightly now that backup had arrived. "She's refused to provide physical ID, and she's not on the manifest." Derek looked at the woman. She stood on the second step of the air stairs now, her hand still resting on the rail, her gaze steady. "Ma'am, I'm Derek Halpern, Terminal Operations Manager. I understand there's been some confusion. Can you tell me which company chartered this aircraft?" "Vanguard Solutions," the woman said. Derek tapped his tablet, scrolled, frowned. "And your name?" "Marlene Gaines." More tapping. His frown deepened. "I don't see a Marlene Gaines on the passenger manifest for this flight. The listed passengers are," he read from the screen, "Jonathan Rice, Angela Portman, David Chen, and Simone Lattimore, all Vanguard executives. Are you traveling with one of them?" "No." "Then I'm afraid I'm not traveling with them. I authorized the charter." Derek's eyes flicked up from the tablet. Vanessa shifted her weight. "Ma'am, Vanguard Solutions is the leaseholder for this aircraft under a corporate charter agreement. The listed contact for that lease is," he scrolled again, "a Jonathan Rice, Chief Operating Officer. Unless you're operating under a different name or there's been an administrative error." "There's no error." Marlene reached into her bag again. This time she pulled out a slim card holder. From it, she produced a black card, matte finish, embossed text barely visible. She held it up. Derek stepped closer, squinted. The card read, "Marlene T. Gaines, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Solutions, LLC." Below that, in smaller print, Board Chair, Principal Shareholder. Derek's face went blank. Vanessa's mouth opened. Marlene's expression didn't change. "I'd like to board my jet now," she said. Derek's fingers hovered over the tablet. He tapped, scrolled, tapped again. I'm going to need to verify this with the charter coordinator. Per section 91.103, the pilot in command is responsible for ensuring, then verify it. It may take a few minutes. You have 4. The co-pilot, still in the doorway, leaned toward the cockpit. A moment later, the captain appeared. A woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled back, 4 stripes on her shoulders. "What's the delay?" she called down. Derek looked up. "We're verifying passenger credentials. There's a discrepancy." The captain descended the stairs. She took one look at Marlene, then at Derek's tablet, then at Vanessa. Who stopped her? Vanessa raised her hand slightly. "I did. She didn't present." "Did you ask her name before stopping her?" Silence. "Did you ask for identification before telling her she couldn't board?" Protocol requires." "Did you ask?" Vanessa's cheeks flushed. "No, ma'am." The captain turned to Marlene. "Ms. Gaines, I apologize for the delay. If you'll give me one moment, I'll confirm with the charter office and we'll get you on board." Marlene nodded once. The captain pulled out her phone, walked a few steps away, and dialed. Derek stood frozen, tablet in hand. Vanessa stared at the tarmac. Around them, the watchers hadn't moved. Phones still raised, the videos still rolling. The captain's voice was low but clear. "Yes, this is Captain Brennan on charter flight VG447. I need verbal confirmation on a passenger, Marlene Gaines, Gaines. Yes, I'll hold." 15 seconds passed. 20. The captain's face shifted. She lowered the phone and walked back. "Ms. Gaines, you're cleared to board. My sincere apologies." She turned to Vanessa. "We'll discuss this after we land." Marlene didn't move immediately. She stood on the second step, the black card still visible in her hand, her gaze sweeping across the small crowd that had gathered. Derek's tablet screen glowed in his hands. Vanessa's face had gone pale, her jaw set in a tight line that trembled at the edges. The captain gestured toward the cabin. "Ms. Gaines, whenever you're ready." But before Marlene could take another step, Derek's voice cut through the moment. "Captain Brennan, I need to log this incident properly, for liability purposes." He tapped his tablet. "Ms. Gaines, I'll need to scan your ID into our system. Company policy requires biometric verification for any disputed boarding." The captain's eyes narrowed. "She's already been cleared by charter coordination." "I understand, but per FAA Advisory Circular 120-57A and our internal compliance standards, any challenged identity must be cross-referenced with Derek." The captain's voice dropped to a register that made even the distant ground crew glance over. "She owns the company that leased this aircraft. She's the CEO. The charter office just confirmed it. What exactly are you verifying?" Derek's fingers hovered over the screen. His mouth opened, closed. He glanced at Vanessa, as if searching for an ally, but she had turned partially away, her hand pressed to her forehead. "I'm just following protocol," he said, quieter now. "No." The voice came from behind them. A man stood near the entrance to the FBO lounge. Tall, late 30s, wearing a pilot's uniform from a different carrier. His badge read, Captain M. Torres, NetJets. He had his phone out, but it was lowered now, held loosely at his side.
"I watched the whole thing," Torres said, stepping forward. "I was waiting for my crew briefing. She walked up to the stairs. Your attendant stopped her before she said a word. Didn't ask her name, didn't ask if she needed help, just told her the section wasn't for her." Vanessa's head snapped toward him. "That's not. I have it on video." Silence. Torres held up his phone. "Timestamp shows 11:36. Miss Gaines approached the stairs. Your attendant blocked her path within 8 seconds. No questions. Just, this section isn't for you." Marlene's eyes shifted to Torres. She gave a small nod. Not gratitude, acknowledgement. Derek's tablet dipped in his hands. The captain exhaled slowly through her nose. "Derek," she said, her voice measured now, almost gentle, Log whatever you need to log, but Miss Gaines is boarding. Now. A small sound broke the tension. A child's voice, high and clear, from somewhere near the lounge windows. "Mommy, why wouldn't they let that lady on the plane?" The question hung in the air, innocent and piercing. A woman's voice, softer, tried to hush the child. "We'll talk about it later, sweetie." "But she has a ticket, right? You said if you have a ticket, they let you on." No one answered. Marlene turned toward the lounge window. She couldn't see the child through the tinted glass, but she looked anyway. For a moment, her face softened. Just a fraction. Just enough to show the weight she was carrying. Then she climbed the rest of the stairs. At the top, she paused, turned. "Captain Torres," she called down. "Thank you." He nodded. "Safe flight, ma'am." She disappeared into the cabin. The captain followed. Derek stood on the tarmac, tablet still glowing in his hands, his breath coming shallow. Vanessa remained frozen, staring at the stairs as if they might offer an explanation, a way back, a reset. They didn't. The co-pilot pulled the door shut. The seal hissed. The engine cycled higher. At 11:51, 4 minutes past schedule, the Gulfstream began to taxi. Inside the FBO lounge, someone offered Torres a bottle of water. He accepted it, unscrewed the cap, and took a long drink. "That happen a lot?" the person asked. Torres didn't answer right away. He watched the jet turn onto the taxiway, its wings catching the late morning light. "More than it should," he finally said. On the tarmac, Derek's radio crackled. A voice from the operations center. "Halpern, we need you back inside. We have a situation to debrief." He pressed the button. "Copy." Vanessa walked toward the terminal, her stride stiff, mechanical. She didn't look at anyone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, once, twice, 3 times. She didn't reach for it. She already knew what it would say. The narrator's voice, calm, steady, documentary smooth, settled over the scene like dust after a storm. Routine is a powerful thing. It teaches us where to look and where not to, whom to question and whom to trust. And when it aligns with bias, conscious or not, it doesn't feel like prejudice. It feels like procedure. It feels like doing your job. Until the moment it doesn't. The Gulfstream lifted off at 11:58. 7,000 feet. 10,000. Inside the cabin, Marlene sat in the forward seat, her phone face down on the table in front of her. She hadn't checked it yet, hadn't opened the messages or the email notifications piling up. She looked out the window instead. The city below shrank into grids and geometry. The sky opened up, endless and blue. For the first time in 20 minutes, she exhaled fully. But she didn't relax. The cabin of the Gulfstream G650 was designed for work that looked like rest. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, indirect lighting that adapts to time zones. It was a space built for people who made decisions at altitude.
Marlene sat with her tablet now, stylus in hand, marking up a presentation deck for a board meeting scheduled 2 days out. Across from her, Jonathan Riss, COO, her second-in-command for 8 years, was on his laptop, spreadsheets glowing across dual screens. He glanced up. "You okay?" She didn't look away from her work. "I'm fine." That was predictable. Jonathan frowned. "Marlene." She set the stylus down, met his eyes. "It's the 3rd time this year, John. Detroit in February, Denver in May, now here." She gestured vaguely toward the window. "Same script, different airport. You could have told her who you were right away." "I shouldn't have to." The words landed flat, factual. Jonathan leaned back. He'd known Marlene since Vanguard was 6 people in a rented office above a dry cleaner. He'd watched her build the company from a consulting startup into a firm managing $1.2 billion in client assets. He'd seen her negotiate with Fortune 100 boards, restructure divisions, absorb hostile critique without flinching. But he also knew when she was done talking. He returned to his spreadsheet. Marlene picked up her phone. 47 notifications. She scrolled.
3 emails from the charter company's regional director, subject lines escalating from inquiry to urgent follow-up to immediate action required. 2 missed calls from her assistant. A text from her lawyer. Saw the video. Want me to make calls? And then, at the top of her feed, a link forwarded by her communications lead. Video of @Vanguard CEO being denied boarding goes viral. Over 200K views in 30 minutes. She tapped it. The footage was clearer than she'd expected. Someone had edited together 3 different angles, adding captions and timestamp overlays. The comments section was a scroll of outrage, speculation, and, predictably, people picking sides before knowing the facts. She stayed so calm, I would have lost it. Flight attendant just doing her job. People need to stop making everything about race. Ma'am, I need you to step away from the aircraft door. Heard that line way too many times in my life. Marlene locked her phone, placed it face down again. Jonathan didn't look up, but he spoke anyway. They're going to want a statement. I know. What are you going to say? She was quiet for a long moment. The jet's engines thrummed, steady and low. Outside, the sky had deepened to a sharper blue. They were over open country now, farmland stitched together in green and gold. The truth, she said finally, that bias doesn't need intent to do harm, that systems built on assumptions hurt people every day, and that when someone tells you who they are, through their presence, their credentials, their calm, you believe them. You don't make them prove their humanity first. Jonathan nodded slowly. That's a good statement. I'm not giving it to the press. He looked up, confused. I'm giving it to her. The Gulfstream landed in Charlotte at 1:47 p.m. By the time Marlene's car pulled away from the private terminal, the fallout had already begun. The charter company CEO had called twice. The FBO's managing director had sent a formal apology via email, CCing their legal team. A regional vice president had requested a call at Marlene's earliest convenience to discuss corrective action. She didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, she opened a different message thread, one her assistant had flagged as sensitive. It was from Vanessa. The timestamp read 12:14 p.m., 23 minutes after the jet had taken off. Subject, apology. Miss Gaines, I don't know if this message will reach you, or if you'll read it, but I needed to write it anyway.
I made a terrible mistake today. I stopped you without cause. I made assumptions I had no right to make. I treated you with suspicion instead of respect, and I did it in front of others, which makes it worse. There is no excuse. I've been thinking about what I would want someone to say to me if they'd done the same, and I know that I'm sorry isn't enough, but it's where I have to start. I'm sorry. I've been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. I don't know what will happen next, but I know I need to do better. I need to learn why I acted the way I did and how to make sure it never happens again. If you're willing, I would like to speak with you. Not to defend myself, I can't, but to listen, to understand the impact of what I did from you. I understand if that's not something you're willing to do. Sincerely, Vanessa Holt. Marlene read it twice. Then she forwarded it to Jonathan with a single line. Thoughts? His response came within a minute. Sounds genuine. Your call. She didn't answer. She looked out the window of the car instead, watching Charlotte's skyline rise in the distance, steel and glass catching the afternoon sun, shadows stretching long across the streets. Her phone buzzed again. Another email, this one from the charter company's president of operations. Subject, formal resolution proposal. Ms. Gaines, on behalf of Skybridge Charter Services, I want to extend our deepest apologies for the incident that occurred this morning. This was a failure of training, oversight, and judgment. It does not reflect our values or the standard of service we strive to provide. Effective immediately, we have taken the following actions. Ms. Vanessa Holt has been suspended without pay pending a full investigation. Operations Manager Derek Halpern has been placed on formal probation.
All FBO staff at the location will undergo mandatory bias and sensitivity training within 30 days. We are implementing a revised passenger verification protocol to prevent similar incidents. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss additional measures that would ensure your confidence in our service moving forward. We value your partnership and are committed to making this right. Respectfully, Gerald Fitzhugh, President Operations. Marlene stared at the email. Suspended without pay? Formal probation? Mandatory training? She closed her eyes. This isn't what I wanted, she thought. But she also knew what happened next wasn't hers to stop. The consequences moved faster than anyone expected. By 3 p.m., the video had been picked up by 3 major news outlets. By 4:30, it was trending on Twitter under hashtag JetGateDenial. By evening, it had been shared across LinkedIn, where corporate professionals dissected it in comment threads that stretched into hundreds of replies. This is why implicit bias training isn't optional anymore. I've flown private for years, never seen anyone asked for ID before boarding like that. The optics are terrible, but let's not rush to judgment. We don't know the full story. We know enough. Marlene's communications lead, a woman named Simone Lattimore, who had managed crisis response for 3 congressional campaigns, called at 6:15 p.m. We need to get ahead of this, Simone said, her voice clipped and efficient. The charter company is scrambling, the FBO is getting review bombed on Google, and you're being tagged in about 400 posts an hour. I'm not making a statement yet. Marlene, not yet. Simone exhaled. Okay, but we need a strategy. Because right now the narrative is splitting. Half the internet thinks you're a hero for staying calm. The other half thinks you're making a mountain out of a molehill. And the charter company is positioning this as a rogue employee issue, not a systemic problem. It is a systemic problem. I know that. You know that. But if we don't say it clearly, on the record, they're going to bury it under additional training and move on. Marlene was silent.
Simone continued, softer now. What do you want the outcome to be? I want it not to happen again. To you or to anyone? To anyone. Then we need leverage. The leverage came in the form of a contract. Vanguard Solutions had a corporate travel agreement with Skybridge Charter Services worth $3.2 million annually. It covered executive transport, client entertainment flights, and international logistics for site visits across 4 continents. The contract included performance clauses tied to service quality, passenger safety, and, critically, non-discrimination compliance. Section 14.3, subsection C. Provider agrees to maintain a service environment free from harassment, discrimination, or bias based on race, gender, national origin, or any other protected class. Failure to uphold this standard constitutes a material breach and grants client the right to immediate contract suspension or termination with no penalty, and entitles client to pursue compensatory damages as determined by third-party audit. Marlene's lawyer had flagged it in a memo that arrived at 7:42 p.m. You have grounds, the memo read. Full stop. Document everything. If you want to push, we can push hard. She forwarded it to Jonathan. His response? How hard? Hers, enough to fix it. At 9 p.m., Marlene sent an email to Gerald Fitzhugh. Subject, Formal Resolution Proposal. Mr. Fitzhugh, I appreciate your swift response and acknowledgement of the incident. However, suspension and probation do not address the root issue. I need to understand what systemic changes will be implemented to ensure this does not happen to me or anyone else again. I am requesting the following. 1. A third-party audit of passenger screening and boarding protocols at all Skybridge FBO locations with findings delivered within 60 days. 2. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff conducted by an external certified organization with completion verified and reported.
3. Revision of employee performance metrics to include accountability for discriminatory behavior, with clear consequences for violations. 4. Public reporting of complaint data related to passenger treatment, broken down by location and incident type, published quarterly. 5. Establishment of a direct passenger feedback channel that bypasses location management and reports to executive leadership. Additionally, I would like to meet with Ms. Vanessa Holt at her discretion to discuss what happened and what she learned from it. This is not punitive. It's educational for both of us. If these terms are agreeable, I am willing to continue our partnership. If not, I will exercise the termination clause outlined in Section 14.3c of our service agreement. I'll expect a response within 48 hours. Respectfully, Marlene Gaines. She hit send. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the dim light of her home office, the city glowing beyond the windows. Her phone buzzed. Jonathan, that's a hell of a list. Marlene, it's a fair list. Think they'll agree? They can't afford not to. Gerald Fitzhugh called the next morning at 6:47 a.m. Marlene answered on the second ring. Ms. Gaines. His voice was careful, almost rehearsed. I received your email. I want to start by saying that we take your concerns very seriously. Good. I've shared your requests with our executive team and our legal counsel. Some of them, the audit, the training, and the feedback channel, we can commit to immediately. Others, like public complaint reporting, will require board approval and infrastructure we don't currently have in place. Then build it. A pause. Ms. Gaines, I'm trying to be realistic about timelines. We want to do this right, but some of these changes will take months to implement properly. You had months to prevent what happened yesterday. You didn't. Another pause. Longer this time. You're right, Fitzhugh said quietly. We didn't.
So let me ask you a different question, Marlene said. Do you believe what happened to me was wrong? Absolutely. Do you believe it could happen to someone else tomorrow? Silence. Yes, Fitzhugh admitted. Without changes, yes. Then we don't have months. She heard him exhale. Okay, he said. Okay, we'll start immediately. Audit within 60 days. Training within 90. Feedback channel operational within 30. Public reporting, we'll phase it in. First report by end of Q1 next year. And the performance metrics? Revised by end of this quarter. Written into every employee review. In writing. Sent to my counsel by end of business tomorrow. Agreed. Marlene glanced at her desk calendar. A meeting in 2 hours. Calls stacked until evening. One more thing, she said. Yes? Miss Holt, I want her in the training program, not as punishment, as a participant and, eventually, as someone who can speak to what went wrong and why, if she's willing. Fitzhugh hesitated. That's unconventional. So is what happened yesterday. I'll extend the offer. Thank you. She ended the call. Outside, the morning was breaking cool and clear. Marlene made coffee, black, no sugar. She stood at the window and watched the lights spread across the rooftops, the streets below beginning to fill with motion. Her phone buzzed again. Simone, Fitzhugh's team just reached out. They want to coordinate a joint statement. Marlene, no joint statement. I'll release my own when I'm ready. Simone, understood. What's the tone? Instructive, not vindictive. Got it. Marlene set the phone down. She sipped her coffee. And for the first time since yesterday morning, she allowed herself to feel the exhaustion beneath the resolve. The audit began 3 days later. A team of 4 consultants from an independent firm specializing in equity and compliance descended on Skybridge's operations hub. They interviewed staff, reviewed boarding logs, analyzed complaint records, and shadowed FBO personnel across 5 locations. The findings, delivered in a 112-page report at the end of Week 8, were damning. Excerpt, page 34. Passenger screening practices varied significantly by location and were heavily influenced by subjective judgment. In 62% of observed interactions, staff initiated ID verification requests based on visual assessment rather than standardized protocol.
When disaggregated by passenger demographics, Black and Latino passengers were 3.7 times more likely to be asked for additional verification compared to white passengers of similar age and attire. Excerpt, page 58. Employee interviews revealed a lack of clarity around escalation procedures and insufficient training on implicit bias. Many staff members expressed discomfort discussing race or discrimination, citing fear of saying the wrong thing and resulting in avoidance of accountability conversations altogether. Excerpt, page 89. Current performance metrics prioritize efficiency and customer satisfaction scores, but do not account for equitable treatment. No mechanisms exist to flag or address patterns of biased behavior, allowing problematic practices to persist undetected. The report's recommendations mirrored Marlene's requests almost exactly. Skybridge's board approved them unanimously. At week 10, the training sessions began. Vanessa Hult attended the first one. She sat in the second row, a notebook in her lap, her pen moving steadily as the facilitator walked through case studies, cognitive bias research, and real-world scenarios. At the break, she approached the facilitator, a woman named Dr. Lena Moss, a psychologist who specialized in organizational behavior. "Can I ask you something?" Vanessa said. "Of course." "How do you know when you're doing it, the bias, in the moment?"
Dr. Moss tilted her head. "You don't always. That's what makes it implicit. But you can learn to notice the gaps, the questions you didn't ask, the assumptions you made without data. You can learn to pause." Vanessa nodded slowly. "I didn't pause," she said quietly. "No," Dr. Moss agreed. "But you're here now. That's the next step." By week 12, the first public complaint report was drafted. It was 4 pages long, transparent, unflinching. It included data on incident types, resolution timelines, and demographic breakdowns. It acknowledged failures. It outlined corrective actions. Marlene read it twice before approving its release. When it went live on Skybridge's website, the response was immediate. "This is what accountability looks like." "I've never seen a company release data like this. Respect." "Let's see if they actually follow through." Marlene didn't respond publicly. But privately, in an email to Fitzhugh, she wrote, "This is a good start. Let's make sure it's not the end." The meeting happened on a Tuesday, week 14. Marlene had requested it personally, not through counsel, not through intermediaries. A direct email to Vanessa Hult, routed through Skybridge's HR department with explicit consent protocols attached. Subject, conversation, your choice. "Miss Hult, I'd like to meet with you, if you're willing. Not for an apology, you've already offered one, and I've read it. Not for closure, because I'm not sure that's something either of us can give the other. I want to understand what you were thinking, what you saw, what made you stop me that day, and I'd like to tell you what it felt like to be on the other side of that decision. This isn't mandatory. It won't affect your employment status. It's entirely your choice. If you're open to it, let me know. M.G." Vanessa's response came 6 hours later. "Miss Gaines, yes, I'd like to meet. Thank you for asking. V.H." They met in a conference room at a neutral location, a business center downtown, 3rd floor, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that was functional but impersonal. No Skybridge branding, no Vanguard logos. Just 2 chairs, a small table, a pitcher of water. Marlene arrived first. Vanessa arrived 3 minutes early, her hands clutching a leather portfolio, her expression careful and composed in the way people look when they've prepared for something difficult. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marlene broke the silence. "Thank you for coming." Vanessa nodded. "Thank you for asking." Another pause. Marlene poured 2 glasses of water, slid one across the table.
"I'm going to start with a question," Marlene said, "and I need you to be honest, not polite, not careful, honest." "Okay. Why did you stop me?" Vanessa's hands tightened around the portfolio. She looked down, then up. "Because you didn't look like you belonged there." The words landed between them, stark and unvarnished. Marlene didn't flinch. What does someone who belongs there look like? Vanessa's jaw worked. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "I don't know how to answer that without sounding worse than I already do." "Try." Vanessa exhaled shakily. "Most of the passengers I see at private terminals they're older, usually. White, usually. Men, often. They wear suits or business casual. They carry certain bags. They move like they've done it 100 times before." She paused. "You didn't look like that. You looked, I don't know, different. And I assumed different meant wrong." "You assumed I was trying to access something I wasn't entitled to?" "Yes." "Even though I did nothing to suggest that?" "Yes." Marlene leaned back slightly. Her voice remained calm, but it carried weight. "Do you know how many times I've been stopped, Vanessa? Questioned in spaces I paid to be in, worked to be in, earned the right to be in?" Vanessa shook her head. "I stopped counting after 20. Vanessa's breath hitched.
Hotels, Marlene continued, conferences, airports, boardrooms, parking garages, retail stores where I've spent thousands of dollars. Someone always asks. Someone always assumes I'm in the wrong place. And the exhausting part isn't the question, it's the calculation I have to do before I answer." She leaned forward. "Do I stay calm so I don't seem aggressive? Do I show credentials immediately, or does that make me look defensive? Do I explain myself, even though no one else has to? And the whole time I'm thinking, if I were someone else, would they even be asking?" Vanessa's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are, but sorry doesn't change the pattern. Sorry doesn't stop it from happening to the next person." "Then what does?" Marlene set her water glass down. "You do." Vanessa looked up, confused. "You change it," Marlene said, "by recognizing what you did, by understanding why it happened, by making a different choice the next time your brain tells you someone doesn't belong. You interrupt the assumption. You ask yourself, what am I seeing? What am I assuming? And what would I do if this person looked different?" Vanessa wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I've been doing the training," she said quietly. "Dr. Moss has been working with me. I'm learning, but I'm terrified I'll do it again, that I'll make the same mistake and not even realize it until it's too late." "You might," Marlene said. "Bias doesn't disappear because you acknowledge it, but awareness is the first step. And the fact that you're terrified means you care. That matters." Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "Does it matter enough?" Marlene was quiet for a moment. "That depends on what you do with it." They talked for 90 minutes. Vanessa asked questions, halting at first, then more direct. Marlene answered them, not gently, but truthfully. She described the weight of being watched, the toll of code switching, the quiet indignity of having to prove yourself in spaces where others simply exist. Vanessa listened. She took notes. She cried twice. At one point she said, "I don't know how you stayed so calm that day. I would have yelled. I would have made a scene." Marlene gave a small, tired smile. "I thought about it, but here's the thing. When you're a black woman in a position of power, you don't get the luxury of losing your temper. If I had yelled, the story wouldn't be about your mistake. It would be about my reaction. I'd be the angry black woman who caused a scene at the airport, and that would follow me." Vanessa's face twisted with something between shame and recognition. "That's not fair." "No," Marlene agreed. "It's not." At the end of the meeting, Vanessa asked one more question. "What happens to me now?" Marlene met her gaze. "That's not up to me. Skybridge is handling your employment status.
But I'll tell you what I told their CEO. I don't want you fired. I want you educated. I want you to be the person who recognizes this in others and stops it before it starts. You want me to be better. I want you to do better. There's a difference." Vanessa nodded slowly. They stood. Vanessa extended her hand. Marlene shook it. "Thank you," Vanessa said, "for seeing me as more than the worst thing I've done." Marlene held her gaze. "We all deserve that chance. You just have to earn it." 3 days later, Skybridge issued a formal public apology. It wasn't a press release buried on page 9 of their website. It was a video, 2 minutes, 40 seconds, featuring Gerald Fitzhugh, CEO, speaking directly to the camera. "On the morning of October 10th, one of our employees made a serious error in judgment. Ms. Marlene Gaines, a valued client and the CEO of Vanguard Solutions, was denied boarding on an aircraft she had personally chartered. She was treated with suspicion and disrespect. This should never have happened." We've spent the past 3 months investigating what went wrong and implementing changes to ensure it doesn't happen again. But before I outline those changes, I want to say something clearly. This was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of systemic gaps in our training, our protocols, and our accountability structures. Miss Gaines could have ended our partnership. Instead, she challenged us to be better. She gave us a roadmap, and we're following it. Here's what we're doing. The video outlined every commitment, the audit findings, the training rollout, the revised complaint system, the public reporting. It ended with Fitzhugh looking directly into the camera. "To Miss Gaines, thank you for holding us accountable. And to anyone who has experienced bias in our facilities or any others, I'm sorry. You deserved better. We'll do better." The video was posted on Skybridge's homepage, shared across their social channels, and sent directly to every corporate client. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed 1.2 million times. The comments were mixed. Some praised the transparency. Others questioned whether it was performative. But the conversation had shifted. This wasn't just about one incident anymore. It was about what comes next. Before we continue, let me know on the comments what lesson stands out to you most right now. The video reached Marlene's inbox at 7:14 a.m. on a Friday. She watched it once, then a second time. When it ended, she sat back in her chair and stared at the screen. Her assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Your 8 o'clock is here. Give me 5 minutes." "You got it." The door clicked shut. Marlene opened a new email. To Gerald Fitzhugh. Subject, Public Statement. Gerald, I watched the video. It's a good start. The transparency matters. The specificity matters. But the real test isn't what you say. It's what you do when no one's watching. Make sure the changes stick. Make sure they're not just compliance checkboxes. Make sure the people on the ground, the ones greeting passengers every day, feel supported in doing the right thing, even when it's uncomfortable. That's where culture lives. In the small moments, in the decisions no one sees. Keep going. Keep going. MG. She sent it. Then she stood, smoothed her jacket, and walked into the conference room, where her team was waiting. That afternoon, Marlene received a call from a journalist. The Atlantic was running a feature on corporate accountability and wanted her perspective. Would she be willing to go on the record? She thought about it. Then she agreed. The interview took place 2 weeks later in Vanguard's headquarters, a renovated industrial building in Charlotte's South End, all exposed brick and natural light. The journalist, a woman named Cara Newsom, arrived with a recorder and a notebook filled with handwritten questions. They sat in Marlene's office, the city visible through the windows behind her. "Let's start here," Cara said. "You've become the face of something much larger than a single airport incident. How does that feel?" Marlene considered the question. "Heavy," she said. "Because it's not about me. It never was. I'm the one with the platform, the resources, the leverage to push back. But there are thousands of people who experience the same thing and don't have any of that. They just absorb it. They keep moving, and no one sees it. Do you think what happened to you was about race? I think it was about assumptions, and those assumptions don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped by who we see in certain spaces and who we don't, who we trust instinctively and who we question. That's bias, and yes, race is part of that. Kara nodded, writing. Skybridge has made a lot of promises. Do you believe they'll keep them?
I believe they're trying. Whether they succeed depends on whether they're willing to be uncomfortable. Real change requires examining yourself, your policies, your culture, your blind spots. That's not easy. It's not fast. And it doesn't come with applause. What do you want people to take away from this story? Marlene paused. That dignity isn't conditional. It's not something you earn by proving you belong. It's something you're owed simply because you're human. And when systems fail to provide that, whether it's at an airport, a hotel, a bank, a hospital, it's not the fault of the person being questioned. It's the fault of the system that taught someone to question them in the first place. Kara looked up from her notes. You could have sued. You could have walked away from the contract and made them pay. Why didn't you? Because punishment doesn't teach. It just punishes. I didn't want Vanessa fired. I didn't want Skybridge destroyed. I wanted them to understand what they did and why it mattered. I wanted them to fix it. Not for me, for everyone who comes after. Do you think they have fixed it? I think they're further along than they were, but this isn't a finish line. It's a process. And the moment you think you're done, you've already failed. The article ran 3 weeks later. The headline, When Power Meets Accountability, How One CEO Turned Humiliation into Institutional Change. It was shared across LinkedIn, Twitter, and Reddit. It was assigned in business school ethics courses. It was cited in corporate diversity trainings. And in the comments, people shared their own stories. I was stopped trying to enter my own building. Security didn't believe I worked there, even with my badge. I've been followed in stores more times than I can count. A hotel clerk asked if I was sure I could afford the room rate. I was there for a medical conference. I'm a surgeon. The thread stretched into hundreds of replies. Each one a data point. Each one a reminder that Marlene's story wasn't unique. It was universal. One comment, buried 200 replies deep, caught Marlene's attention. It was from a young woman, mid-20s by her profile picture, who wrote, I'm starting my first corporate job next month. I'm terrified of moments like this. How do you stay strong when it keeps happening? Marlene didn't usually reply to public comments, but she made an exception. You stay strong by remembering it's not about you. It's about them, their limits, their assumptions, their need to learn. You stay strong by building a network of people who see you fully. And you stay strong by knowing that every time you show up, you're rewriting what belongs looks like for the person behind you. It's exhausting, but it matters. The reply got 12,000 likes. The young woman responded, Thank you. I'll remember this. 6 months after the incident, Marlene returned to the same private terminal. Same FBO, same tarmac, different flight. She walked through the glass doors at 9:47 a.m., rolling a carry-on behind her, her phone in her other hand. The terminal was quiet, just a handful of passengers scattered across the lounge, the hum of a coffee machine, soft instrumental music playing overhead. A woman at the reception desk looked up. Mid-30s, name tag, Rebecca. She smiled. Good morning, name for the flight? Marlene Gaines. Rebecca typed quickly, eyes on her screen. Vanguard Solutions chartered to Boston. You're all set, Miss Gaines. Your aircraft is on the apron, third gate. Captain Brennan and the crew are already on board. No hesitation, no second glance, no request for additional verification. Just the transaction. Marlene nodded. Thank you. She turned toward the exit to the tarmac. Miss Gaines? She stopped, turned back. Rebecca stood, her expression earnest. I just wanted to say, we've all been through the training. All of us. And I've learned a lot.
She paused. "I'm sorry for what happened to you here. It shouldn't have. And we're working to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Marlene studied her for a moment. Then she gave a small nod. "Thank you for saying that. Safe flight." Marlene walked through the doors and onto the tarmac. The air was cool, crisp. October again. A year almost to the day. The Gulfstream sat waiting, engines quiet, stairs extended. At the base of the stairs stood a flight attendant, younger than Vanessa, maybe late 20s, wearing the same Navy uniform with gold piping. He smiled as she approached. "Good morning, Miss Gaines. Welcome aboard." No clipboard, no manifest check, no suspicion. Just welcome. She climbed the stairs. Inside the cabin, Captain Brennan was running pre-flight checks in the cockpit. She glanced back, caught Marlene's eye, and raised a hand in greeting. Marlene returned it. She settled into her seat, stowed her bag, and pulled out her tablet. The engines started their low cycle. The cabin door sealed with the familiar hiss. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. And for the first time in a long time, normal felt like progress. At 30,000 feet, Marlene opened her email. At the top of her inbox, a message from Vanessa Holt. She hadn't expected it. The subject line read, "Update." She opened it. "Miss Gaines, I wanted you to know that I completed the bias training program last month. Dr. Moss has asked me to participate in the next cohort, not as a trainee, but as a co-facilitator. She thinks my perspective could help others understand the real cost of assumptions. I said yes. I've also been working with Skybridge's Diversity Task Force to revise our onboarding protocols. We're implementing scenario-based training for all new hires, and I'll be part of the team delivering it. I know this doesn't undo what I did, but I'm trying to make sure it means something, that it leads somewhere better. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know. Thank you for giving me the chance to learn. Vanessa." Marlene read it twice. Then she hit reply. "Vanessa, this is good work. Keep doing it. The fact that you're willing to stand in front of people and say, 'I got it wrong, and here's why,' matters more than you know. That's courage. That's accountability. Don't stop. MG." She sent it. Outside the window, clouds stretched in endless white fields. The sky above them impossibly blue. Marlene closed her eyes. And exhaled. The plane landed in Boston at 12:14 p.m. Marlene had a meeting at 2 o'clock. A pitch to a potential client. A healthcare network looking to overhaul their equity and inclusion infrastructure. Vanguard had been invited to bid. It was a $4.7 million contract. She arrived at their headquarters at 1:45. The receptionist greeted her warmly, checked her in, and offered coffee. No one questioned why she was there. No one asked for extra identification. No one made her prove she belonged. The meeting went well. By 4 o'clock, they'd verbally committed to moving forward. Marlene's team would draft the contract by end of week. As she left the building, her phone buzzed. "Jonathan, how'd it go?" Marlene, "We got it." "Jonathan, knew you would." "Drinks tonight?" Marlene, "Rain check. I'm tired." "Fair. You've earned it." She smiled, slipped the phone back into her pocket, and walked into the cool Boston afternoon. That evening, back in Charlotte, Marlene sat in her living room with a glass of wine and her laptop. She opened the latest quarterly report from Skybridge. Passenger treatment complaint data, Q4. She scanned the numbers. Complaints down 34% compared to the previous quarter. Bias-related incidents down 41%. Training completion rate 97% across all FBO locations. Employee satisfaction scores up 12%. At the bottom of the report, a note from Gerald Fitzhugh. "Miss Gaines, the changes you pushed us to make are working. Not perfectly, not everywhere, but measurably, and we're not stopping here. Thank you for not giving up on us. GF." Marlene closed the laptop. She set her wine glass on the side table and leaned back into the couch. The room was quiet. The city lights blinked in the distance. She thought about the morning, The terminal, Rebecca's words, the flight attendant's smile. She thought about Vanessa, about the training, about the long, hard work of change. She thought about the young woman who'd commented on the article, starting her first corporate job. You stay strong by knowing that every time you show up, you're rewriting what belongs looks like for the person behind you. Marlene closed her eyes. It was exhausting, but it mattered. 18 months later. The numbers told a story. Skybridge's third-party audit, conducted by an independent firm with no financial ties to the company, showed results that surprised even the auditors. Key findings. Bias-related passenger complaints, down 68% since the initial incident. Employee completion of advanced bias training, 100% across all customer-facing roles, with quarterly refresher courses now mandatory. Passenger screening protocols revised at all 23 FBO locations, with standardized checklists eliminating subjective judgment calls. New complaint resolution time, average of 48 hours, down from 18 days. Diverse hiring across FBO staff, up 29%, with targeted recruitment partnerships established with HBCUs and professional organizations for underrepresented groups. But beyond the numbers, there were stories. A black entrepreneur boarding a charter in Miami reported being greeted by name, offered assistance with luggage, and thanked for his business, no questions asked, no credentials demanded. An Asian American executive flying into Denver noted in a feedback survey, "First time I haven't been asked if I'm in the right terminal. Small thing, big difference." A Latina CFO wrote directly to Skybridge's executive team, "I've been flying private for 6 years. This is the first time I felt like I was expected, not tolerated." The feedback channel Marlene had insisted on, direct to executive leadership, bypassing location managers, logged 347 pieces of input in its first year. 82 were compliments, 41 were suggestions for improvement, 19 were complaints. Every single one received a response within 72 hours. Every complaint triggered a review. 3 employees were terminated for repeated violations after coaching failed. 14 were placed on performance improvement plans. 2 were promoted after demonstrating exceptional cultural leadership. The training program expanded. Dr. Lena Moss, the psychologist who'd worked with Vanessa, was brought on as a permanent consultant. She developed a curriculum that went beyond one-time workshops. It included scenario-based simulations where employees experienced what it felt like to be questioned, doubted, stopped. Quarterly case study reviews where real incidents, anonymized but detailed, were analyzed collectively. Peer accountability groups where staff could discuss moments of uncertainty and how they'd handled them. Vanessa Holt became one of the program's most requested speakers. She didn't sugarcoat her story. She didn't perform contrition. She told the truth, plainly, uncomfortably, completely. "I saw a black woman, and I assumed she didn't belong. I didn't ask her name. I didn't ask if she needed help. I just decided she was in the wrong place. And I was wrong. Not just factually, morally." The rooms were always silent when she spoke. Afterward, people asked questions, hard ones. How do you know when you're doing it? What if you don't realize until it's too late? What if the person you hurt doesn't forgive you? Vanessa answered every one, and every time she ended the same way. You don't get to decide if you're forgiven. You just get to decide what you do next.
Marlene didn't attend the trainings, but she read the evaluations, she tracked the data, she met quarterly with Fitzhugh to review progress. At their one-year check-in, he'd asked her, "Do you think we've done enough?" She'd looked at him for a long moment. "You've done what I asked, but enough isn't a finish line. It's a question you have to keep asking." He'd nodded. "Fair." Vanguard Solutions launched its own initiative, the Equity in Motion Fund, a $10 million commitment over 5 years to support organizations working on bias training, equitable policy reform, and leadership development for underrepresented professionals.
Marlene didn't announce it with fanfare. No press release, no ribbon cutting. Just a quiet page on Vanguard's website and an open application process. In the first 6 months, they funded 22 organizations. One was a nonprofit teaching implicit bias workshops to law enforcement. Another was a startup building AI tools to identify discriminatory patterns in hiring algorithms. A third was a mentorship network connecting young black professionals with executives in Fortune 500 companies. Each one received funding, strategic support, and access to Vanguard's network. Marlene attended the first cohort convening. She didn't give a keynote. She sat in the audience and listened. At the end, a young woman approached her. Early 20s, nervous energy, eyes bright. "Miss Gaines, I just wanted to say thank you. Your story, what you did, it's why I had the courage to apply to business school. I'm starting at Wharton in the fall." Marlene smiled. "Congratulations. You're going to do great things." "I hope so. I want to build something like you did, something that lasts." Then build it. And when someone tries to tell you that you don't belong, prove them wrong just by being excellent. The young woman nodded, eyes glassy. "I will." 2 years after the incident, Marlene received an invitation. Skybridge was hosting a company-wide summit on equity and inclusion. They wanted her to speak. She almost declined. But Jonathan convinced her. "They're trying," he said, "and the people who need to hear from you aren't the executives. It's the frontline staff, the ones doing the work every day." She agreed. The summit was held at a convention center in Atlanta. Over 800 Skybridge employees attended. Flight attendants, operations managers, ground crew, FBO staff, corporate leadership. Marlene took the stage at 10 a.m. She didn't use notes. She told the story. Not the viral version, not the headlines. The real one. What it felt like to stand on those stairs, to be questioned in front of strangers, to carry the weight of representing every black woman who'd been told she didn't belong. And then she told them what came next. The meetings, the audits, the training, the data, the slow, hard work of change. "You're here because someone decided that incident couldn't be the end of the story," she said. "Someone decided it had to mean something. That's not heroic. That's just accountability. And accountability isn't a moment, it's a practice." She paused. "So here's my question for you. What are you practicing?" The room was silent. "Because 2 years from now, someone's going to walk into your terminal, your aircraft, your workspace, and they're going to look different from what you expect. And your brain is going to make a split-second judgment. It's going to tell you something about who they are, what they want, whether they belong. And in that moment, you get to choose. Do you act on the assumption? Or do you pause? Do you ask? Do you see them as a person first and everything else second? That's the work. That's the practice." She looked out at the audience. "I can't do it for you. No policy can do it for you. You have to choose it. Every single day." The applause started slowly. Then it built. Marlene stepped off the stage. And as she walked through the crowd toward the exit, a flight attendant stopped her.
Young, black, early 20s. "Miss Gaines?" Marlene paused. "I just started 3 months ago, and I was scared. Scared I'd be treated the way you were. But everyone here has been different, better, and I think it's because of what you did." Marlene's throat tightened. "It's because of what they did. They chose to learn. Don't forget that." The young woman nodded. "I won't, thank you." On the flight home, Marlene looked out the window. The sky was clear, endless. She thought about the first video, the tarmac, Vanessa's face. She thought about the email from the young woman starting her corporate job. She thought about the flight attendant at the summit. And she thought about the moment, 2 years ago, when she'd stood on those stairs and decided not to yell, not to storm off, not to let anger become the story. She'd decided to build instead. It was exhausting, but it mattered. The plane descended into Charlotte. The city spread below her, familiar and whole.
She was home. 3 years later. Marlene sat in her office on a Wednesday afternoon, sunlight slanting through the windows. Her calendar miraculously clear for the next hour, a rare gift of time. She opened her laptop and navigated to a folder she hadn't looked at in months. Media Archive, October 2022. Inside were dozens of files, news articles, video clips, social media screenshots, email threads, the entire documented trail of what had happened that morning on the tarmac. She clicked on one of the videos, the original, shaky, vertical footage that had started everything. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the aircraft door." She watched herself, standing there, calm, measured, waiting. She remembered the calculations running through her mind in real time, the awareness of phones recording, the knowledge that any reaction, any flash of anger, any raised voice would become the story instead of the injustice. She remembered the exhaustion of that calculation. But she also remembered what came after. The meetings, the changes, the data points showing real progress, the young professionals who'd reached out to say her story had given them courage, the policies rewritten, the training programs launched, the complaints that dropped by 2/3, the flight attendant at the summit who said she felt safe. That mattered. All of it mattered. She closed the video, opened her email, and began to type. 2. Company-wide distribution. Subject: 3 years later, a reflection. Team: 3 years ago today, I was stopped from boarding an aircraft I'd chartered. I was questioned, doubted, and publicly challenged. Not because of anything I'd done, but because of assumptions someone made about who I was and whether I belonged. It was humiliating, it was exhausting, and it was, unfortunately, familiar. But what happened next matters more than what happened that day. The company involved didn't just apologize. They audited their systems. They changed their policies. They trained their staff. They published their data. They held themselves accountable, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And because of that, hundreds of people have had better experiences. Employees have better tools. Systems are more equitable. Not perfect, but better. I'm sharing this today because I want you to remember something. Change doesn't happen because one person demands it. Change happens because people choose it. Leaders choose it. Teams choose it. Individuals choose it, in small moments, every single day. When you see bias, you can choose to interrupt it. When you witness injustice, you can choose to name it. When someone tells you a system is broken, you can choose to fix it instead of defending it. That's the work. That's what builds a culture worth being part of.
3 years ago, I stood on a tarmac and decided not to let anger write the ending. I decided to push for something better. And I'm grateful to every person in this company who's made that same choice, to learn, to grow, to show up better for each other and for the people we serve. Keep choosing it. Marlene. She hit send. Within minutes, replies started coming in. Thank you for sharing this. It's a reminder I needed today. Your leadership on this has shaped how I think about accountability in my own work. I'm proud to work here because of the example you set. Marlene read each one. Then she stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. 3 years. So much had changed. So much was still changing. And that was the point. That evening, Marlene received a message from someone she hadn't heard from in months. Vanessa Holt. Miss Gaines, I saw your email. It made me think about something Dr. Moss said in one of our last sessions. Transformation isn't a moment. It's 1,000 small decisions to do better than you did yesterday. I've been making those decisions for 3 years now. Some days are harder than others. Some days I still catch myself making assumptions I have to actively interrupt. But I'm doing the work, and I'm teaching others to do it too. I'll never be able to fully repay what I took from you that day, but I'm trying to honor it by making sure it leads somewhere good.
Thank you for not giving up on the possibility that people can change. Vanessa. Marlene stared at the message for a long time. Then she replied, Vanessa, people can change. You're proof of that. Keep going. MG. She closed her laptop, poured herself a glass of water, sat in the quiet of her home. Outside, the city hummed with life. Cars on streets, lights in windows, people moving through their own stories, carrying their own weight, making their own choices. She thought about the young woman starting business school at Wharton. She thought about the flight attendant who felt safe. She thought about the 68% reduction in complaints. She thought about the 1,000 small decisions it took to get there. And she thought about the work still left to do. It was exhausting, but it mattered. The story of what happened on that tarmac didn't end with a viral video. It didn't end with an apology or a policy change or even a measurable outcome. It continued. In every training session where someone learned to pause before assuming. In every revised protocol that centered dignity over efficiency. In every employee who chose to speak up when they saw bias instead of staying silent. In every passenger who walked into a terminal and was greeted as though they belonged, because they did. The story continued because Marlene chose not to let humiliation be the ending. She chose accountability. She chose education. She chose the long, unglamorous work of systemic change. And in doing so, she proved something essential. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation. It's about taking the thing that broke and building something stronger in its place. It's about making sure the person behind you doesn't have to fight the same fight. That's the work. That's what lasts. Now it's your turn. Have you faced something like this? A moment where you were questioned in a space you had every right to occupy? A time when someone made an assumption about you before you even spoke? An experience where you had to prove your humanity, your competence, your right to be there, simply because of how you looked? Or maybe you've witnessed it, seen someone else stopped, questioned, doubted, watched it happen and didn't know what to do, or did know and acted. Share your story below. Someone else needs to hear it. Someone else is living it right now and wondering if they're alone. They're not. And your voice, your experience matters. Here's what I want to know. Have you experienced bias in a professional setting? What happened, and how did you respond?
If you witnessed someone being treated unfairly, did you intervene? Why or why not? What changes have you seen in your workplace or community that made a real difference? What's one thing you wish more people understood about what it's like to be questioned in spaces where you belong? Drop your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, if Marlene's story reminded you that change is possible, that accountability matters, that dignity isn't negotiable, consider subscribing to True Justice. We tell stories like this because they need to be told. Because silence protects systems and stories disrupt them. Because every time someone shares their experience, they make it a little bit easier for the next. Marlene Gaines didn't set out to be a symbol. She set out to board a plane. But when the moment came, when she was stopped, questioned, doubted, she made a choice. Not to shrink. Not to rage, but to stand firm in her dignity and demand that the system rise to meet it. And because she did, hundreds of people have walked through terminals, offices, boardrooms, and public spaces with a little less weight on their shoulders. That's the power of accountability. That's the power of choosing transformation over punishment. That's the power of refusing to let injustice be the end of the story. So here's the question. What will you choose? When you see bias, will you interrupt it? When you witness injustice, will you name it? When someone shows you a better way forward, will you take it? The work is hard. The work is long.
But the work matters. And it starts with you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this conversation. If this story moved you, share it. If it challenged you, sit with that. If it reminded you that change is possible, carry that forward. Subscribe to True Justice, because the next person shouldn't have to fight this fight alone. And neither should you.